Al Jazeera Podcasts.
Hey everybody, how's it going? So today's episode is just audio. Yeah, no video, but don't worry, we've got a solid conversation lined up, so please stick around. Today, the ultimate test for Japan's first female prime minister is a visit from Donald Trump.
I look forward to meeting the new prime minister. I hear phenomenal things. She was a great ally and friend of Shinzo Abe, who was my friend, former prime minister.
Can she outlast her predecessors and manage the turbulent relationship between the U.S. and China? I'm Kevin Hirten, and this is The Take. Before we continue with today's show, remember to leave us a comment telling us what you think of this episode and what stories you want us to do next. Or if you're on your favorite podcast app, leave us a review telling us where you're listening from, and you might as well just give us a 5-star rating while you're there. It really does help the show. Enjoy.
My name is Jeffrey Hall. I'm a lecturer at Kanda University of International Studies, which is located in Chiba, Japan, right outside of Tokyo.
Jeffrey, thank you for coming on The Take today. So, Japan has a new prime minister, the first woman ever to hold this role, Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi. But first, maybe we could start with news of the day, which is that the Tokyo Tower is lit up in red, white, and blue. Quite the welcome for President Donald Trump's first visit to Japan since 2019. So let's start there. In broad strokes, where would you say the U.S.-Japan relationship stands as of this moment?
I think the U.S.-Japan relationship is pretty good right now. There isn't any major issues that are causing conflict between Japan and the U.S., even though Trump is seen as, this very unstable, unpredictable president. When it comes to Japan, since he took office in his second term, he's been very friendly to Japan, other than the tariffs, of course, but he gave every country tariffs.
Yes.
And he was able to give a somewhat generous deal to Japan that allowed Japan to have relatively lower tariffs, although of course those tariffs are still going to be hurting Japan's economy. It's not seen as punishing as it was before. And as he visits Japan now, there isn't this sense of doom that Trump is coming to punish Japan. There's actually sort of a sense that he's positive about Japan and wants to have a friendly visit. And so I think Japan and the U.S. are on the same page on a lot of issues, especially security. So I think there's room to be optimistic.
So the news is flying fast and furious on this trip. There are reports now of a preliminary deal between the U.S. and China, with a meeting between Xi Jinping and Donald Trump expected sometime this week. So this is the big headline as the U.S. delegation arrives in Tokyo. And it might maybe signal that Washington is in a deal-making mood. But in terms of what's happening in Tokyo, what is on the table? What will the U.S. and Japanese negotiators be hammering out?
There's several ideas that have been floating in the media. Maybe viewers have heard about this offer by Japan to buy Ford F-150 pickup trucks, a very large truck that is not well suited for driving in Japanese cities, but the Japanese government might use them in rural areas and mountain areas where the roads are not as good. And it'll at least symbolically kind of please Trump, because he talks about these trucks a lot and the Japanese government has noticed it. So they're going to have that sort of symbolic purchase of Ford trucks. There's also a shipbuilding deal that is supposed to be announced where Japan and the U.S. are going to cooperate on building ships, increasing their market share in the world of ship production, because China is growing as a creator of ships. And if there's conflict with China, then who's going to build our ships? So they're going to have some kind of deal about that. And the prime minister is also perhaps going to offer some kind of defense spending increase. So all of these things will probably please President Trump. And there isn't really anything on the table to try to argue back with him or try to renegotiate the deal. It's more about trying to just make him happy and entertain him while he's here.
Yes, and this is all about extracting concessions in exchange for tariff relief. One of the things posited in July is that Japan would invest $550 billion in investments in the United States. Now, I read that was 1/10 of the economy of Japan. Considering the amount of debt the country is carrying, can Japan really afford this?
I think it can, but it really depends on how you define this money. And I think the U.S. and Japanese governments haven't really agreed in their public statements about what kind of form this money is going to take. The Japanese side is not just going to pay cash to America for anything. It sounds more like this will be some kind of thing that Japan decides specific industries to invest in. Some of it might involve Japanese companies already making investments that they plan to do anyway. But Donald Trump and members of his administration have talked like Japan is just going to give us, $500 billion to do anything they want with.
Yeah.
And that's going to be one of the problems.
Yeah, to be clear, that was the deal that was negotiated in July. There was no restrictions to what this money would be. So I assume that's going to be a lot of what they talk about this go around.
Yeah, and it's not a written deal. It's not like they had a treaty that they signed that had specific terms. So there might be some misunderstandings involved, but Japan is going to try to do its best to not disagree with Trump, but redirect his thinking towards what they want instead without telling him he's wrong.
So this is a high-stakes moment, not just for Japan, but particularly for its new prime minister, Sanae Takaichi, who's only been on the job for just over a week now. It's amazing. She's jumping right into the deep end.
Right now, I believe Japan's economy is in a very fragile state. We'll likely see more companies and related industries affected by Trump's tariffs, and various other challenges may arise as well, including sudden natural disasters.
What will you be watching for as she hosts Donald Trump?
I'll be watching for how they interact with each other publicly, but a lot of this has been prepared for in advance by the Japanese government. They have this very brilliant team of foreign ministry officials who have binders and files on Trump. They've been studying him for years. They know his quirks. They know how to communicate with him. They did it during the Abe years. And so even though she's been prime minister for 7 days, before that, the foreign ministry was giving her special briefings, which is usually something they do not do to someone who has not been confirmed as prime minister yet. But this is a national crisis in terms of if you mess up talking to Trump and you say something that makes him think that you're being unfair or disrespectful to him, he could punish the country. So it'll be interesting to see if these study sessions that she's been going through will pay off in the way that it paid off for the previous Prime Minister Ishiba and the way it paid off for Abe, who really became an expert on handling Trump when he was alive.
Yeah, she is saying all the right things. She said, strengthening the Japan-U.S. alliance is the top priority for my administration's foreign and security policy. And on a personal level, it's not hard to imagine Trump taking a shine to her. I mean, she has a reputation as an anti-immigration, hardline conservative who, as you said, has a lot of respect for his friend and frequent golf partner, the late Prime Minister Shinzo Abe.
Yeah, definitely. This Abe angle is very important, and they'll be having basically a bunch of events that are meant to remind Trump of Abe. Mm-hmm. They will be giving him a golf club that belonged to Abe as a present. And because Trump loves gold, he'll be getting a gold golf ball. There'll also be a trip down to the U.S. Navy base at Yokosuka, which is somewhere that Abe and Trump went to back in the day, and they had a great photo op on an aircraft carrier together with Japanese and American troops. Trump loves his photo ops with the troops, so Japan is happy to provide him with this kind of thing. they've also given him a meeting with the emperor because Trump loves royalty and emperors. So there's all kinds of things they're trying to do, but they're also having him meet with Akie Abe, the widow of former Prime Minister Abe, who has remained close with Trump and his wife since Abe's passing, and sort of acts as an unofficial ambassador to the Trump family. And so they're going to play as much as possible on the fact that the new prime minister is a protege of Abe, and there's all these positive memories that Trump can be reminded of, this time he spent in Japan with his special friend Abe.
We'll have more with Jeffrey after this break. So, Jeffrey, let's dive a little deeper into Sanae Takaichi, the country's first female prime minister.
I will be fearlessly working hard without being afraid of changes for the country and the people. Today, I put together the cabinet for that very purpose. I am determined to deliver results for the country and its people, to build a strong country. I will never give up.
Now, we should say she is now leading the Liberal Democratic Party. That's the LDP, which has dominated Japanese politics for the better part of 70 years. It's a traditional, business-friendly, old guard party now in the hands of a Margaret Thatcher-admiring, metal band drumming hardliner, a very interesting political character. So sketch this out for us. Who is she, and how did she rise to this lofty position?
Well, Kevin, she is someone who is sort of an unlikely character to rise to the top of Japanese politics, not just because she's a woman, but because she doesn't come from the typical background of Japanese prime ministers, which is either wealth or wealth plus being in a political family. So she was born in Nara in the 1960s to sort of middle-class family. Her parents both had to work, which wasn't normal at that time for most politicians' families. Her father had a pretty humble job. And when she wanted to go to a university, her parents told her, "We can't afford to send you to an elite university," even though she passed the exam to Keio University, one of the best universities in the country, a private university that the previous prime minister, Mr. Ishiba, graduated from. And her father said there wasn't much point in paying so much money for a private university. Why not just go to a 2-year junior college, work at a Japanese company, find a salaryman there to marry, and then settle down and become a housewife? But she didn't want to do that. She was driven. She'd been working part-time jobs since high school, and she raised enough money to be able to pay her own tuition to Kobe University, which is a prestigious national university, which is far cheaper than the private universities. She was a member of a heavy metal rock group when she was there. She was a drummer. And she had to commute, I believe, 3 hours each way from her home to go there because her parents didn't want her to live alone because it was sort of something not really traditional at the time. After that, she went to America to be a congressional intern where she conducted research under a Democratic Party congresswoman. And then after that, she came back to Japan and she became this expert on America that appeared on television. And that's really how she got her start into the political world.
Well, you can see the similarities between Margaret Thatcher, the daughter of a greengrocer, and then you can also see echoes of the American dream in her story. Does that help explain some of her nationalistic tendencies?
I think the admiration for Thatcher is certainly explained by this coming from humble origins into a society or a group of politicians that is usually the conservative elites who've been there for generations. And if there are women among that group of people, they're often the daughters of other politicians or the daughters of very wealthy people. So she very much admired Thatcher. One of her favorite books is Thatcher's autobiography. She was able to travel to the UK and meet Margaret Thatcher near the end of Thatcher's life. So she is inspired by this. But I'm not quite sure where her nationalistic beliefs come from. These are beliefs that are a little bit different from British conservative beliefs, because being a Japanese nationalist entails certain beliefs about history that include justifying Japan's conduct in World War II, underplaying certain atrocities that other countries claim Japan committed, and feeling that Japan's apologies for World War II were either unnecessary or exaggerated.
Yeah.
So this is something, though, that since she became a politician in the early 1990s, she has strongly expressed as a view. She is a historical revisionist, and this is part of her character, although as prime minister of the whole country and the whole party, she may have to sort of moderate these views in her public statements so that she doesn't rock the boat too much.
Yeah, she's repeatedly visited the Yasukuni Shrine, which honors the convicted war criminals from back in World War II. And to this day, she's has a reputation for being hawkish on China. While there's no plan in Tokyo to halt international migration, she does view Chinese nationals as potential spies. I wonder how that is playing out with your everyday people in Japan.
I think that everyday people in Japan, if you talk to people on the street, they usually don't talk about politics. There's a saying in Japan that there's 3 things you shouldn't talk about. One is baseball, one is religion, and the other is politics. Because all 3 of these could cause some kind of fight or a confrontation of differing beliefs. And Japanese people tend to value decorum and not really arguing with each other. But there's one thing they tend to agree on, and that is disliking China. So you can poll Japanese people, and over 80% of the country has a negative opinion of China.
Wow.
China is the source of the most tourists to Japan, and over-tourism and dislike of rude tourist behavior is one of the things that has sort of driven the rise of Takaichi, as well as far-right parties that are more extreme than her.
So another issue on the table in the negotiations is defense. Simply put, the United States wants Japan to spend more. And the target number is what NATO pays, which is about 2% of GDP. But even that might not be enough for Trump. Where does Takaichi stand here? Is more military spending something she would support?
I think so. I think she wants to spend much, much more on defense than Japan is spending right now. There was a goal to reach 2% within a couple years, but she said she's going to do it within this budget year. And there is expectation that Trump will ask Japan for further increases, maybe even 3%, 4%. And I think she's willing to try to go there if she can. But the big problem is Japanese people don't like paying taxes, and and weapons cost money. So there is this issue of how are you going to pay for this? And for her, she's not Margaret Thatcher with spending. She thinks that the country can issue bonds and deficit spend and cut taxes. And that will somehow make the economy grow and not require tax increases. And that is not really conventional wisdom for Japanese conservative politicians.
Yes, and it should be noted that the person that Trump is asking to spend more on military is the same person who is a Japanese nationalist who has revisionist history about World War II. That must make South Korea and China nervous, I would imagine.
I don't think that the South Koreans are that nervous about it. I think South Korea, they have been cautious about Takaichi because they have been on a trajectory to cooperate more with Japan, especially due to sort of increased distrust of the reliability of Trump in an emergency. And so you would have expected in a previous sort of left-leaning president that they would react very negatively when historical revisionist became prime minister of Japan. But that hasn't been the case right now. They have been open to further security cooperation with Japan. So as long as Takaichi moderates her views on history in public and doesn't visit the Yasukuni Shrine in person, that might be okay for Korea. China, of course, will never be okay with Takaichi.
Yeah.
The things she said about China and Chinese people over the years have set her out as a far-right anti-China politician to them. And that's what they've been saying internationally in the media. So I don't think there's much room for friendliness towards China with Takaichi, but Korea, who knows?
Let's wrap up with what this visit might signal about where U.S.-Japan ties are headed over the next year. Where do you see the friction points for her moving forward? What will be the big test that will determine if she is a long-term solution or just the latest LDP stopgap?
Well, right now she's riding high on very, very high approval ratings, over 70% according to some, which I think shows a lot of optimism in the idea of this first woman prime minister, somebody very different from previous prime ministers. But there's a looming problem, and that is the rising cost of living. It's gone up again, and these staple things are becoming more expensive. She needs to make the Japanese voters feel like the economy is getting better or that she's taking some kind of significant action. And if they feel pessimistic about the economy and they don't really feel like what she promised is happening, it could be very bad. There's no easy fix to the economy. It might require increased immigration as well to reduce labor shortages, and that's not something her conservative voter base really likes. So that could hurt her as well. It could drive more people to the far right.
Yeah. And I mean, look, the LDP is not the juggernaut it once was. I mean, aesthetics aside, has the party really changed? Do you think that this could represent a fundamental change where people start looking at the LDP differently? Or do you think this could still be the slow erosion of support that leads to something more transformative?
Well, Kevin, I don't think the LDP has changed at all. It's still the same party. It's still the same scandal-plagued lawmakers. She appointed several of the very worst, most dirty in the eyes of the public politicians to significant positions in her administration. So her strategy seems to be to just pretend that those scandals are resolved, even though they really aren't. So if she can prove to the voters, though, that the economy is improving and that she's an amazing diplomat who's doing great things internationally, maybe voters will overlook the scandals. Back in the past, for decades, the LDP was incredibly corrupt.
Yeah.
They had some of the most insane corruption scandals you can imagine, but they still kept winning elections every time. So that's because voters were okay with the state of the country. So if she can improve the state of the country, or at least convince people that the country's improving, then maybe she is going to go on to be a successful Japanese Thatcher. But if she can't, then she is, as the young students in America say, cooked.
So we're in the sugar high period. We'll see. Okay. Jeffrey Hall, thank you very much for giving us this tour of Japanese politics. Thank you for coming on The Take.
Thank you very much.
And that's The Take. This episode was produced by Marcos Bartolomé, Haleema Shah, Amy Walters, Farhan Rafid, Fatima Shafiq, Tamara Khandaker, and me, Kevin Hirten. It was edited by Noor Wazwaz and Sarí el-Khalili. Our sound designer is Alex Roldan. Our video editors are Hisham Abu Salah and Mohannad Al-Melhem. Alexandra Locke is The Take's executive producer, and Ney Alvarez is Al Jazeera's head of audio. We'll be back tomorrow.